Another fantastic edition of Steamboat Gravel is in the books. I did the 100 again, came second there, rode this Ridley Kanzo Fast with some Hunt 40 CGR wheels and my trusty favorites, Schwalbe G1 RS's. Was talking to Peter Vakoch, who came second behind Keegan. He was on these same guys. I want to tell you about the bike, how it fared, how I neglected to do some things like make sure all the bolts are tight. You know, some lessons you just got to learn, or at least I have to learn over and over again. I also discovered a benefit for these integrated cockpits, which are a source of hot discussion on the interwebs these days. You can put your Gravel Fondo stickers right across the top of them. I enjoyed using the DJI Action Cam 3 because it pops off easily, so I can get the POV and also like a little bit of this. Enjoyed some features of the Wahoo. I should have set it up a bit better. Saddle, not so much. Also had a bit of a saga getting the bike together to work without severe screeching and vibrating in the back. Tell you all that story. I'll tell you about why I love Steamboat Gravel, why you should come and do this event if you haven't done it before, what I liked, what I did not like. First, I'm gonna go clean myself up. I'm kind of cracked and I've got like the full salt tie-dye going on here. You take a second to hit that subscribe button if you would, please. That helps me out. Then we'll meet back here. We'll talk Steamboat Gravel, Ridley Kanzo Fast, and all the gravel things. Now it's the day after Steamboat Gravel. I'm here in Cow Creek, which is the roughest section of the course. It's a trending downhill few miles that leads to the final bit of pavement into town. Before I talk about the bike, I want to talk about the race because I think the race gives good context for the bike. If you don't want to hear me blabbing about the race, you can skip ahead in the little menu section down below. But first, let's talk Steamboat Gravel. I love this event for a few reasons. Yes, the riding is beautiful, the area is beautiful, but it's just the big, 2, 3, even 4 day for some people weekend party that really makes this thing special. There's a ton of shakeout rides. Got some folks too here still getting in some good stuff. A little gravel dessert after Steamboat Gravel. Shakeout rides start on Thursday.
And the lady. Yeah. What's up, man? How are you, Bijou?
Good morning. Good morning. Hey, I know you.
Oh, hi, Ben.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Friday and Saturday, there's large and small rides that go out. I did the chamois butter shakeout ride, which is huge. There's hundreds and hundreds of people on that. It's just a great time to catch up with folks, meet some new folks, and it's just so different from your run-of-the-mill road race scenario where people will come in, do the event, get out here. The event itself is only part of the event weekend. So I enjoyed seeing people from Lauren Hall and Reggie Miller to some of my friends just coming up from the Boulder area.
Why are you up the back, you need to be up the front. You need to be up there.
Good, how are you?
Lauren.
Yeah, good to see you, Lauren.
Same.
All right, brother.
Everything good with you?
Yeah, man. So it's just a great time to hang out and appreciate being outside, enjoying bikes and each other and nature. The expo is also part of the party. You can see new bikes. Factor Moots, who's based here in Steamboat Springs, had a new wheel size. Yes, a new wheel size, 750 Double D. You can watch that video up there. Castelli and Reggie had a free throw contest game, which I lost at, got knocked out in the first bracket. But yeah, just lots of good fun outside of racing the bike.
Let's see, Ben Delaney, good at bikes, good at writing, good at talking, good at hitting the rim, it looks like.
There are multiple distances, as there are in many events. I did the full 144 the first time. It's a lot, especially at altitude. And when you don't have the self-discipline to not try to go with the fast folks at the front, then you blow up and you cramp and you come limping home. So the past 2 iterations, I've done the 100. Won it last year, tried to win it again this year, but Bryce and Judah from Bissell came through and ran some good team tactics and went 1 and 3 respectively. So Nice ride there, fellas. Good riding with you, good racing with you. Let's talk about how the race shook out and how that shook out some pieces on the bike. The 100-miler has the biggest crowd. There's like 1,200 of us or so. I'm number 1178. We start off big mass group on wide paved highway, jumps into the wide county roads. Amy Charity, the race director, has been talking about her gravel here is champagne gravel because most of it is super smooth, treated with magnesium chloride, so a lot of it runs smoother than some pavement, which is part of why I go with the Schwalbe G1 RS tire, which has the nice thin file tread. Plus you're on a lot of pavement. There's probably 30, 40 miles of pavement in the 100 mile and a little bit more in the 144. The roads narrow down as we hit some short rollers and some trickier descents. There's some bits where it was like deep with sand and pretty good ruts, so it behooves you to be closer to the front so you can see a bit more of what's going on as dust is getting kicked up in the early morning light and just the general chaos of bike racing. There's a few spills early on. I hope everybody's okay there. The crux of the race, or at least the crux of my race, is the steep switchbacky climb up to Steamboat Lake, and that's preceded by a bit through a field. Well, I don't want to call it single track, but it's a rougher stretch where the field gets strung out, and so you go in a few hundred strong, and just like a super long distance cyclocross race, it gets strung out and broken up a bit, and then if you're not in the front, you're gonna have to close gaps just as the stair-step climbs are starting. So was happy to be closer to the front this time. Up over the tippity top, it was down to like a group of 8, and then that was splintered in half. I was enjoying being here with my FasCat co-workers. FasCat Coaching and Training is a Colorado-based company with coaches and athletes around the world, and we were using this as a family reunion of sorts. We had a fun dinner Saturday night for athletes, and many of us were riding many of the different distances. So Andrew Jeanette was out here from North Carolina, and I was enjoying riding with him and following his pro cyclocross wheel through some of the trickier bits. I was also glad that he backed off a little bit over the top of the climb because I was in a spot of bother there. That was the group of 8, and we were rolling together through the single track up at the top where it was so dusty, and then down on the road. Having a hydration pack certainly figures into this race. The first time I did it, I did not have one, and I was forced to stop, and I lost the group I was with. So subsequent editions, I bring a hydration pack, and that played out well this year. It's a bit of a bummer, honestly, starting out in the first rollers when you can just not only feel but hear the extra weight sloshing around on your pack. But as the day wears on, the heat turns up. No one was complaining about having too much liquid. The race does a great job of having multiple stops. Here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 main aid stations plus 1 neutral water stop, and then there was another water spot put on by the Chamois Butter folks. Thank you very much. Not listed here. So you've got like 6 opportunities to top off in the 100 mile. Different races do it different ways. Unbound, of course, is famous for just having super minimal number of stops, and race organizers can cook things up however they want. Amy does a good job of having plenty of stops, plenty of free water and hydration and snack options, as well as good course markings. So another crux point of the race was an aid station. Probably half of our group of 8 stopped to top bottles. Those of us who had packs on kept on rolling, and that would determine the podium there. I came apart a bit on the last climb. The Bissell guys stood up, and I stood up, and my leg said, "Sit back down. You are cramping now." And that's all part of the fun, is pushing it to your limits and then seeing how you can deal once you have discovered said limits. The ride is supported this year by Feedback Sports, which makes this sprint stand that I love for working on bikes and washing bikes and for blabbing to you on video. Feedback Sports is running a sale right now for yours truly and you. You can use the code THERIDE25 to save 25% off your full order at feedbacksports.com. Let's talk Kanzo Fast, the Ridley bike here. This is comparable, or at least in the same category as the BMC Caius, a bike I've tested and generally love, and then the Factor Austro Gravel, which I raced this year at Unbound Gravel 100. There's a lot of D words and a lot of F words, not those kind of F words with this bike. You've got the D-shaped post and the D-shaped steer, which allows for the internal routing. And then you've got what Ridley calls its F shapes, of like the little F wings coming off the back of the bottom of the fork. And then, you know, the truncated aero profile of the main tubes. The bike is quite similar visually to Ridley's Noah Fast, their aero road race bike. It looks and at the BB feels pretty similar to that bike. It's a little slacker, you know, in this medium size. It's a 71.5, so race gravel geometry. BB drop is like 72. So it's not an aero road bike, it's an aero gravel race bike. But yeah, super stiff down here pedaling. Not quite as cushy as the BMC Caius. I feel like there's just a little bit more give both in the post and maybe the frame in that BMC model. It feels pretty comparable to the Factor Austro Gravel in terms of, it's not as stiff as a aero road race bike, but it's certainly not the super plush gravel all-arounder. Another thing that influenced how the bike felt was this saddle. Cell Italia makes a number of SLR models, and I like many of them. I like the SLR boost shape, but I like the one with the cutout. And this has got this like super hard, like hard plastic area right in the center where a cutout normally is. So if I was going to have this bike to have and hold forever, I would absolutely swap that model. But even with a pretty firm saddle and a firm center channel on the saddle, the bike was, you know, probably middle of the road, leaning a little bit towards the firmer side for overall feel. Big differentiator with the aero cockpit, which is, you know, a thing in aero gravel race bikes like the BMC Caius and the Factor Austro Gravel. BMC Caius, you can get whatever bar you like as long as it's the 36 width. Even the tallest bikes have a 36 centimeter width. This guy you can get in a variety of widths from 36 to 42 and a variety of stem lengths from 90 to 120. So I got a 120 38, I want to say, or 40. I'll have to go back and measure that, put that on the screen. I don't have a strong dogmatic position about integrated cockpits versus a standard stem and separate handlebar, except for you just got to make darn sure that the thing fits you before you get the whole thing put together, because once it's all put together, it looks beautiful, it's nice and clean aesthetically and aerodynamically, but it's brain damage to have to change the whole thing out. So there's no one stock answer. If you're just getting into gravel bikes, this might not be the best way to go unless you're working with a fitter and you can get on a very similar bike to make sure that it fits the way you like it before you purchase this thing. Or if you know exactly what fit you like and what dimensions you like, then once it's set up like your normal bike, you're probably not going to change it if you're happy with it. So I do appreciate the fact that you can't slip a fixed handlebar. That's certainly something many of us have experienced in races sometimes, of the bar slipping just a bit when you hit hard things. One thing that I appreciate about race testing is you put yourself and your bike in testing conditions that you wouldn't otherwise do. So you discover things like, maybe this wasn't as tight as I thought it was, or maybe my fitness wasn't quite as good as I thought it was. So for testing bikes, I like to ride them both by myself, where I can pay attention to small things, and in events where, yeah, sometimes you can't choose the line you're riding in, or the visibility is not great, and that really tests things like your tires or your bolt tightness when you're rattling over things. There was a little rubber stopper on the top of the stem cap that came off well before I even got to this race. Just doing normal riding around, that bit came off. So that little bit could be improved. Ridley claims this to be the most aerodynamic, the fastest gravel bike in the world. Turns out I don't have a wind tunnel out here. How important is aero in gravel. It factors in for sure, like physics, the laws of physics apply out here on dirt roads on Cow Creek just like they apply on pavement. The speeds are lower though, and rolling resistance is a much larger piece of the equation. So, you know, you could put the, you know, a Keegan Swinson on a box-shaped frame and he would do just fine. I'm sure the differences are measurable. How much they affect your real-world placings, probably more minimal, but it certainly looks cool. I coasted away from my group of 8 a couple times on downhills. Was that because of an aeroframe or because I weigh 185 pounds, probably had 20 or 30 pounds on a few of my fellow riders out there? All that to say, I'm not trying to convince you to go full aero race versus an all-around gravel race. You probably have an idea of which you prefer. I can give you context for how this sits compared to the BMC Caius. It's a bit stiffer overall for sure, but you can configure the integrated cockpit. And it's, you know, roughly the same, I felt, in terms of ride feel and handling to the Factor Ostro Gravel. You can get this puppy for much cheaper than the BMC Caius, which is, you know, on the astronomically high end. So it should ride as nicely as it does for that price. This is not a spec build because I've got Hunt wheels on here. The reason why I have this bike is the guys at Hunt asked if I would like to test out these 40 CGR wheels, big fat 25 millimeter internal width, and as the name implies, 40 mil deep, kind of a Goldilocks for ride comfort and aerodynamics. And they said, hey, you haven't tested out the Ridley Kanzo Fast. Would you like to do that? I said, sure. So they arranged for the bike with the Rival parts to be delivered to their shop, and I picked it up there, picked up the wheels, put the thing together, and went down a rabbit hole of some screeching and vibrating experiences. I cleaned the rear rotor and pad. It was still and vibrating all the way up here. I took the rotor off, took the pads off, soaked the pads, sanded the pads, put it back on, same deal. Switched both rotors and pads to another set that was on another wheel set, brand new. After a while, same deal, screechy, vibrating, like what the heck is going on? Changed to a different set of wheels, and the screeching and vibration was gone with that same, you know, rotor pad combo, which was bizarre to me. How a wheel could cause brake screeching and vibration was a bit of a mystery. So I pulled up to this race with that second set of wheels, was planning to ride that, talked to the guys at Hunt. They're like, what's going on? Let me take a look at this. So Samuel Johnson, who is the president of Hunt USA and also a long-term high-level mechanic, came over, brought a new wheel, brought some Shimano rotors instead of the SRAM rotors, put those on, and then noticed, hey, this the little chip at the axle, there's a wee bolt on the inside. It was a tiny bit loose. He tightened that up, and with a new rear and a Shimano rotor, screeching was gone, vibration was gone. So I'm glad the problem was fixed, and I'm not sure if it was, you know, just the flip chip with the tiny bolt being a little bit loose, or the Shimano rotors, or the new rear wheel. It's still a bit of a mystery to me why the first fix of just putting on a different wheel with the same rotors and pads fixed it, but all's well that ends well. I guess there's just like a lot of different pieces and parts that go into making bikes function. So like I said, a bit of a rabbit hole, but we ended up with a nicely, smoothly functioning bicycle. As I said, I think this 40 mil is a good Goldilocks depth. We saw Keegan running a 40 front and a 63 rear because he is here to do one thing and one thing only, which is to crush souls and win races. And aerodynamics, especially at his speeds, are an important thing. I think for the rest of us, if we're out there for 4 and 5 and 6 hours, you know, I was averaging like 20.5 miles an hour or so. Yeah, aerodynamics are still a thing, especially on the road sections. But a super deep wheel, when you're rattling down Cow Creek, that just transmits more of the vibrations up into the saddle. So I'm happy with this, even with this 35 mil tire, which on this rim measured up to like a 38. Yeah, happy with this wheel and tire combo for the conditions. Let's talk gearing. SRAM Rival 12 speed with the 1044 Explorer cassette. This bike came with a 42, which is a little bit bigger than stock. Normally we're seeing bikes come with a 40 tooth front ring. I put on a 44 with the Cork Spider so I can have power, because if you don't have data, how do you know how much fun you're having in a gravel race? And that was plenty of gear both on the top end and the low end. Was certainly in the 44, going up to the last steep pitches there on the climb up to Steamboat Lake, where it was coming down to that group of 8. And compared to my fellow racers having a 44-10, I didn't get spun out before anybody else. So for most events, and this isn't like the steepest climbing in the land, but for most events, a 1044 I feel is adequate for gravel racing. It's just a matter of like dialing in what ring is right for you. SRAM Rival, like SRAM Apex, the 4th tier sibling, has metal cranks, but has the same design, so you can swap either the direct mount rings, or this power meter with a ring on it. Other little but important things. Shimano XT pedals. Had these forever and ever. Love how they work. I lent my coworker Mike D some SRM power meter pedals that work pretty well, but they're so fiddly, like getting them to recharge. And then I got them all set up, calibrated. He was using his hammerhead, and power was like half of what he thought it should be, and he was super frustrated with that. I tested it with a Garmin and realized, okay, yeah, it's just something about the SRM to hammerhead. Hammerhead's only reading one pedal, not both. So just having a solid, trusty, reliable pedal that works well, I think is a pedal's primary and hopefully only purpose, and I'm happy with these. I know some guys and gals like a road pedal for a slightly wider platform and slightly firmer engagement, but for me, like walking around in fields and gravel roads, a mountain bike shoe is nice. I was riding Shimano's RX-8 for the first time. Those are comfy for me in the wide version right out of the box. So that is if it ain't broke, don't fix it, with both pedals and the shoes. Other simple but important things. Cages. As typical at this race and at gravel races in general, there were bottles strewn all across the road. I had bottles eject on the cages that came with the bike, so I put on these Dawn to Dusk. This Captive 8, Captive 14. I don't think they're the best looking cages, but like a good pedal that does its job very well, this cage does its job very well. So I can recommend the functionality, if not the aesthetics, of these Dawn to Dusk cages. Silca Titanium are another popular choice, pricier choice. King Cage, the OG, also a great one. I like the Arundel carbon cages, again a little pricier but super reliable. And then some good mid-range cages do just fine, like a Bontrager or Specialized. Not the highest end, but just the mid-range plastic cages, those also work great. Lastly, Wahoo had an update recently in that it has a predictive climb feature, which was copied, frankly, from Hammerhead. That was Hammerhead's like one differentiating feature, was when you're riding without a course on the computer, it will recognize where you are, and if you're going up a climb, it will auto-populate what the gradient is and give you this color-coded profile, which is super cool and can be handy. So that's something I've appreciated about this recently. One thing that I neglected to do was to set up the profile when following a course to show the profile at the bottom. So it was, either I could see the route, like upcoming turns and bends in the road, which is super helpful when you're coming into a corner hot, knowing if it's just like a tiny bend or if it's like a full-on 180. That's very helpful, and that's what I keep on the main screen for the majority of a race. But it is better, and what I will try to remember to do for next time is to get the elevation profile put on the bottom so you also know what you're in for in terms of climbing coming up. The race footage you're seeing throughout this video is from this DJI Action Cam 3. There's already an Action Cam 4 out that I've got at the house. I haven't yet played with it. I like the fact that it's this little magnetic clip You have to press on both sides. It's not the easiest to do when you're riding, which is probably a good thing. You probably shouldn't be taking it off when you're riding, but if you're standing around in the crowd before the start, for instance, it's nice to be able to pop this thing off. Or if you're at a coffee stop or whatever on your normal rides, it's handy to have something that is fixed when you're riding, but then easy to pop off. There are a lot of different settings, but there are 2 stabilization modes, each of which reduces the total frame size a bit. So like there's your regular frame, which you don't want to use certainly for gravel cycling. And then there's the main stabilization, which reduces a bit, and there's the stabilization plus, which reduces it even more. And I mean, you be the judge here of this footage. You can look at the jiggling arms and bodies of riders and see that the footage itself is nice and relatively stable. So maybe not quite to GoPro standards, but pretty darn close. And then as far as color, you can get just the standard color or the enhanced, which is maybe a bit saturated for my taste, but I default to that because that's just quicker and easier than doing color correction after. So that's the DJI Action Cam 3, a bit cheaper than the GoPro Black 11, which has been my go-to. In the saddlebag, got 2 Schwalbe TPU tubes. They're pricey, but they're quite small. Nice insurance, an extra CO2 tire lever, a wee little bottle of squirt wax lube, and then in my jersey pocket I'll have a CO2 breaker and then a dyno plug, so you can just, if and when you need it, it's right there at hand. With the exception of Cow Creek, which is on the rougher side, most of this course is pretty smooth, so didn't have to use any of this, thankfully. And honestly, the only time I have flatted these Schwalbe G1s, or any Schwalbe G1s, has been racing at Unbound. So I'm very pleased with not just the feel and speed and grip of Schwalbe tires, but the durability of these guys. So, as you've seen from my top 5 gravel tires, this was my #1 there and continues to be. I love these tires. So what do you think? What do you think about this bike? What do you think about aero gravel race bikes? What do you think about Steamboat Gravel? I enjoy our conversations and I look forward to continuing this one in the comments section down below. I appreciate you watching. I appreciate you subscribing. And whether you like the aero race or a standard gravel bike, whatever you're doing,
enjoy the ride.
all right.
The next athlete is clearly old enough to be the father of the 2 other riders on the podium. So he checks in at 64. No, Ben is probably 45. Ben, how old are you? 47-year-old Ben Delaney, ladies and gentlemen. Ben Delaney is iconic in the world of gravel. In Colorado, you're our king. Ben, congratulations. No doubt about it. It doesn't get classier than that. And now a rider a third the age of Ben we'll be bringing up is he'll be racing as a junior out here. So I don't know that he's 18. He's not. Do you have a driver's license? Yeah, okay. This is out of Brighton, Michigan. I'm going to assume that Judah, do you guys travel together? Yeah, nice. Judah Gustafson, a bronze medal. Ben Delaney is silver. And this young junior out of Michigan is our champion. 100 miles today. And Bryce Natter, you're the man. You really are, Bryce. There are very few 17-year-olds that have ridden a bike 100 miles, let alone at the pace that these guys are. So it's a really nice time to celebrate this sport. Let's give it up for the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. This is Bryce Natter, Ben Delaney, and Judah Gustafson. So, no champagne. Ben is like, but I'm of age. Do you need a voucher? So, hey guys, thanks again. And Amy, thank you.